Welcome to Hope is Here, bringing hope to those struggling with life's difficult situations.
Welcome to Hope is Here. My name is GregJHorn, and man, I love sharing with you about organizations that provide hope here in the state of Kentucky. And today joining us is Quincy Burt. He's with a wonderful ministry called Orphan Care Alliance, and Quincy's a guy that we have a lot of connections from a guy, Matt Leo, with LCA football that I've been doing the games with. Hard to believe it's almost football season, and just we keep running into each other and bumping into people, and we've been trying to find the right time, and thankfully we finally found the time. So Quincy, thanks for your patience and thanks for your ministry. Thanks for being here today on Hope is Here, man.
Yeah, man, it's been a while since I've been over here at WJMM in the shadow of the Kentucky Castle and sipping on High Bridge water. So I'm glad that we got to do all that together today and talk a little bit about some hope and you know, that hope and healing that only Jesus can bring. And that's at the center of what we get to do at OCA. And I'm looking forward to talking about all of that with you today.
Yeah, I'm excited because until I got to meet you at some mutual events, we've ran into each other the past 6 months. I had to plead ignorance, which is what you're doing, is getting the word out. And I'm like, man, how did I know about this wonderful organization? But before we get into more about OCA, is what the initials for Orphan Care Alliance stand for. Tell us a little bit about yourself, your background, and how you got in this line.
Well, there's a tremendously long story. God is so good, and the way that He divinely makes our journey work even when we think we're doing the working. Sometimes it's just amazing to look back and see what He's done. I grew up at a place in Liberty, Kentucky called the Galleon Children's Home, and I'm grateful for the opportunity and the foundation I had there, and it's a beautiful ministry that's still there over in the South Fork region, and still connected and love them and love what they get to do for children, and so it's always been kind of in my blood to be around and working with and living and doing for vulnerable children and families, and so the Lord has in and out of different career moves, and I went to Asbury College, which is now Asbury University over in Wilmore, and got my media communications degree. I've done some sports broadcasting, which is where some of our connections come together, and been in and out of ministry as He's led, and just tried to stay in tune to what He has for me, and that's taken me from central Kentucky to far western Kentucky at a little bit over there at a network called the Box 2 Radio Network. Got to do some great things there. And then from there, the Lord led me to a Christian radio station in Atlanta for a few years. And then I was actually out in New Mexico briefly with a children's home out there. And then the Lord saw fit to bring me back to the Bluegrass State. And I've been back here about now 2 years working with Orphan Care Alliance. And all of those things, the thread in between has been just finding ways that we get to be the pointing back to Jesus. And that's just always been who I am. I was fortunate to have the gospel presented to me in a way that I understood when I was 5 years old. I remember vividly, it was after a church service, and my cousin wanted to pray with my older brother, and they didn't think I was old enough yet, but I kept saying, how come I can't have this Jesus that you're telling me about? And so I was the troubled kid. I wanted out of trouble. That was what I understood, was He took care of the trouble. But I remember we went over to Fort Herod that day, and I still had the little musket ball in my hand, and I put it down to fold my hands and pray. And that was back in 1988. And I had the opportunity to pray and accept Jesus in my life, and ebb and flow of all of that through high school, college, all the things. God has been faithful, and He's kept me from a lot. And the opportunity I've had in and out of ministry, you know, the enemy tries to take our story away. Mm-hmm. And what you do is so important that encourages people to speak up and give their testimony. And for so many years, I didn't think I had one because I was saved when I was young. I didn't go down the path of drugs and all the things that people get saved from and have that big, powerful testimony, right? And so for me, being in faith-based nonprofits for most of my life, whether it was Christian radio and even in my sports broadcasting days, I was surrounded by good people like Matt Leo, you mentioned earlier, and others that were believers. And so I never had to really be in a position where I was shaken. Now, I've had definitely things in my journey that I had to get down on my knees and say, Lord, what in the world's going on? Not saying I haven't been tried and tested, but God has protected me in a way that has been wonderful. And I want to be able to speak of that to those that want to listen. And because of the service we get to do at OCA, because we get to stand on our faith, because we don't take state or government funding or things like that, that we can stand on our faith and present it in a way to those that need the most hope and healing that only Jesus can bring, is what brought me to OCA. And I'm so grateful to be part of the team and getting to have opportunities like this to talk about it.
Well, I think that's the thing sometimes we don't realize, like, well, God, why'd you have me do this radio thing, And I did the Christian radio in Georgia. I think you shared Atlanta area.
Yeah.
And then, but, it's funny, Hope Is Here got started. We were actually in the same room, but facing the other way when they used to have an AM 1250 talk show, and did that for 3 years, and just felt like God closed that door. And the next thing I know, 6 months later, Benson Gregory, the general manager, called me and said, I know your favorite two things are Jesus and sports. You talk about sports careers, would you like to talk about Jesus on the radio? And so I love how God connects the dots.
Yeah.
Your story's a perfect example of that. So well, tell people they're okay. They're like, all right, man, this Quincy guy sounds like a good guy. I like him. Orphan Care Alliance. Well, talk about what is that?
So a lot of interconnected ways that we get to connect, equip, and mobilize Christ followers to serve vulnerable children and families. And so you can say, well, that's a pretty broad thing, right? Vulnerable children and families. So we focus on foster adoption and kinship care families, but also those on the margin of losing their kids to foster care. We want to be upstream from the problem. In Kentucky, there's over 8,800 kids in the foster care system. And there's over 90,000 kids that are labeled as living with someone other than their biological parents. So that's where that kinship family, that could be grandma, grandpa raising great grandkids, all the things, siblings raising siblings, all of the situations you can think of, it's growing. And so there's people on fixed incomes trying to raise little kids and remember what it's like. Wait a second, it's been 50 years since I raised an 8-year-old. And so we have a lot of different ways that we help in each of those lanes, but we open it up to that vulnerable children and families, and we'll get into some of this later, I'm sure, of some of the intricate ways and interconnected ways. But we want to engage the church and Christ followers in being part of the solution, because, as you know, if all the churches in the 120 counties of Kentucky got together and said, you know what, we're going to make sure this child welfare problem doesn't exist anymore, it could happen pretty quick. Amen. And so our goal is to really engage the church and to have, and that, when you said earlier that you maybe hadn't heard of who OCA is, it's kind of almost intentional. We want to be able to put people in position, these families that we work with. We do the work with them. We have programs that help them be sustained and keep their families together and meet all the needs and do all the different things. But we want to be able to plug them into the church and let the church do their job, and then we're a layer of support behind the church. Because we fully believe the church, Christ followers, are called to be part of the solution, and we get to help do that.
Wow. Well, I love it. Your foundational verse, James 1:27. Talk about that.
So, it talks about, as a preacher, you've probably preached on it, talking about taking care of the widow and the orphan, right? And so that is our foundational verse for a very good reason. It's commanded throughout Scripture that we're supposed to take care of the least of these. And oftentimes the least of these are quantified in widow, fatherless children, right? And so we take that to heart. We take that mandate at its core. And that's, again, why we engage the church, because the church is called to do that, not just nonprofits that sign up for it. And so we do foster parent training. We do respite training. We have ways to meet tangible needs and services. We have life coaches that are mentor-mentees with kids from these backgrounds. We have all of these different ways that we engage the church in doing that. We do trauma trainings for church so that they can help serve these children and families better, because there's almost never they're going to be a foster family or one of the families in these kind of situations. They're going to come into your church and raise their hand and say, hey, help me, I'm a foster family. Now, there's signs. If they come in with the 15-passenger van, you might know. But there's a lot of opportunity for us to just... A lot of times, it's not that the church can't help or isn't helping. Sometimes they just don't know. Yeah. And so education and advocacy is a big part of how we fulfill that James 1:27 mandate.
Well, it's a beautiful, beautiful thing there. What does that actually look like for how you guys all operate?
So what it looks like is being the hands and feet of Jesus in those situations where we can connect and mobilize, and that we can give that equipping piece, right? And so a lot of opportunities to train in, sometimes that looks like being able to keep a family together. So when I talked earlier about all the interconnected ways, one of the largest growing kind of foundational pieces of who OCA is family preservation, being upstream, like we talked about earlier. And so we have full-time and some part-time caseworkers that go in and do in-home casework. And so their goal is to set goals with families that are on the margin of losing their children to foster care, or could be a situation where there's a kinship family, they just are lost and don't know what to do. And so we have that opportunity to do a 90-day program with our in-house casework, and then that will become the opportunity to plug them into the local church. That will be the opportunity to love on them by meeting tangible needs and services we have an online platform that does that I'm sure we'll get into a little bit later. So again, those interconnected ways, from training parents that might want to take a child into their home. And we have an expedited faith-based training that is approved by the state, but we are not under the state. We don't take funding from them. So that allows us, first of all, to be able to stand on our faith in how we train. Second, it also allows us to not depend on the whim of legislation or funding priorities. And so it gives us flexibility to train, to work with families, to be able to reach across the state and the 5 counties of southern Indiana that we serve in this family preservation space. So for context in the growth of what it's meant just to OCA, in 2024, we served about 68 families. About a third of them graduated, was able to keep their family together. Sometimes families decide it's not for them. It's a voluntary program. And so those obviously don't graduate from our program, but we try to help connect them to other nonprofits. We don't just drop them. But graduating, about a third of those 68 families we served in 2024. In 2025, we served over 130 families and graduated 68. So we graduated more, or around the same as what we served the year prior, and we're already seeing numbers exponentially grow this year. And so we are really spending a lot of time in prayer and discussions of how to get more OCA trained, trauma informed caseworkers across Kentucky, especially over in eastern Kentucky right now. They are begging for this opportunity. Now, central Kentucky, because of Fayette County and where we were founded in Louisville, Jefferson County, there's a lot of resources for these families, and we help connect them. But in eastern Kentucky, the need is almost as great, but less resources. And so we're starting to really see a focus on the opportunity to grow in that area. We already have some services there, but we don't have caseworkers, boots on the ground yet. And so that family preservation piece is growing. God is moving quickly in it, and we're trying to grab a hold of the hem of his garment, I guess, and hold on for dear life and see where we can go with it. But God is good, and we're looking to really continue to just see how he's moving and move with that, and provide hope for these families.
Well, you guys are doing a great job with it. We only got about 45 seconds left. You're going to be back tomorrow. But if somebody's like, man, I want to find out more information about OCA, what's the best way to do that?
Orphan Care Alliance is online at ocakids.org. And all of our social media with Facebook, Instagram, all of that stuff is OCA Kids in some form or fashion. So that's probably the easiest way, is ocakids.org. Any events that we have coming up, trainings, all of that stuff is right there at that website. Great way to stay connected is through the Facebook page, and that would be Orphan Care Alliance or OCA Kids.
Well, they've got a 5K coming up that we're going to be talking about more tomorrow. It's on August 29th in Richmond at the Whitehall Historical Site. So make sure you go to your website there and check that out, and we'll be talking more about that tomorrow. For Quincy Burt with Orphan Care Alliance, I'm GregJHorn. We'll see you tomorrow on Hope is Here.
Thank you for listening to Hope is Here podcast. To listen to one of our previous programs or to make a tax-deductible donation, please go to our website, hopeishere.today. That's hopeishere.today.
Hope is Here is blessed to receive a $15,000 matching gift this summer. To help us utilize this wonderful opportunity, would you please consider making a donation? No gift is too small, and all donations are tax deductible and greatly appreciated. To make a donation online or to find information on where to mail a check, please go to our website, hopeisheretoday.org. Again, that's hopeisheretoday.org.